Hi, welcome to the Aortic Kitchen. I'm Chef Rob, the Aortic Chef.
I'm Mindy Seltzer, registered dietitian, otherwise known as the aortic dietitian.
We are here today for our second episode this season of the Aortic Kitchen. So today we are going to do a little demonstration on simple and easy bread technique for those of us that are home that want to have fresh bread because store-bought bread is typically very high in sodium, and that's my key word is sodium. Um, So the best way to get a good tasting low so bread is to make it yourself at home. But then everybody's, oh, bread is so difficult. It takes so much time. It's so hard. What am I going to do? Well, I have a really simple recipe. And for those of us that are uh, have maybe haven't had our dissection or surgeries recently, and you're not really up to par, you don't have all your strength, this is a no knead bread. So you don't have to spend a lot of time working it. And if you don't have a mixer, you don't have to go out and buy a mixer with a dough hook and everything to make this particular bread. It all happens right in a bowl. So really simple and easy. It just takes a little time as far as just waiting time. So while your bread's sitting and proofing, you can be doing other things. Then, when that's done, I'm going to do a quick gluten-free cookie because that's also one of the things about bread. We have members and other people that do not like to eat gluten or should not eat gluten. And so, how do we do things without it? We'll talk about that afterwards, but I am going to demo a real quick and simple 3 ingredient uh, gluten-free cookie. That takes a total of about 15 to 20 minutes from start to finish, or should I say from start to mouth. Okay. So I'm going to start. Minnie's going to go take a break, and I'm going to begin with my bread.
Assist you as
Okay.
you need.
So this no knead bread, again, is very simple. There's only typically bread is made up of flour, yeast, salt. We do have to have salt though. Okay. Salt free bread really tastes terrible. And you also need salt in order for the yeast to work properly and for the proofing to happen. It interacts with the yeast as a conditioner and also as a retardant. So many things that salt does, but we can cut back on the salt. We don't need all the salt that's in bread, typically bread recipes. So we'll cut that back. I'm going to cut it back today by half. A little bit less than that, the bread doesn't taste really good, but we're going to make up that flavor difference by putting other flavor into the bread to help it along. So we got flour, we got yeast, we've got salt and water. 4 ingredients. That's all it takes to make bread in the right proportions. So this is going to be a no-knead bread, as I said. So let's look at the ingredients. I have bread flour. This recipe typically goes with all bread flour, but I'm the aortic chef and I like, food is medicine. So I like to blend in whole wheat flour, and you can do that with pretty much any bread recipe that you want. This recipe calls for 3 cups of flour, of bread flour, and I take 1 cup of flour of bread flour out and add in a cup of whole wheat flour. So replace one of them, 1 cup with 1 cup. Some recipes will also call for all-purpose flour. Those work just as well. What's the big difference in all-purpose flour and bread flour? Bread flour has more protein in it, uh, anywhere from 11 to 13% protein. Typically for bread flour, all-purpose is in that 10 to 11. It's not that much different. You can make a bread. What will happen? It'll be a little bit softer. It may not have quite that chew if it's a kneaded bread. Okay, and but all-purpose and bread pretty much interchangeable. Okay, with most of your bread recipes. So let me start here. Show you how simple this is. So this needs 2 cups. Okay, 2 cups of flour, of the bread flour, and you don't want to like really pack it. So I've got my flour in a bag. Just kind of pour it in there. Don't scoop and pack. And then, take something straight. I got a spoon handle here and just level it off. Make sure you got that full cup. And there's our 1 cup. And here is our second cup. Simple. Typically, I would have this pre-measured, but I want to demonstrate that little technique. We're going to want to use warm water, okay, for the yeast to activate it. Yeast just is a living organism, and just like our bodies, it thrives in that about around 100 degrees. Anything higher than like 115, yeast will typically die. So you don't want hot water, but warm water is good. Now, if you're doing some of these overnight breads, you can use a cooler water because you don't need it to react that fast. So, all right, here we go. Here's my cup of whole wheat flour. All right, that's done. That to the side. I'm going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. The recipe called for 1.5 teaspoons, which is a lot. And I use granulated when I bake rather than kosher. It dissolves better and spreads throughout the product better. Okay. The yeast. The recipes for these no-knead breads call for instant yeast. Instant. It may say quick rise, it might say bread machine, but it says instant yeast as compared to active dry yeast. That's what you find typically in the packets. Active dry needs to be bloomed in water. That's where you mix it in water and wait 10-15 minutes for it to start bubbling and foaming. Instant yeast is made differently. You can just put it right in with the flour and go to work. It will hydrate immediately. Now I'm just mixing a little of that salt in because the salt, if you put your yeast right on top of salt or salt right on top of yeast, it can kill the yeast. Because as you know, just like for everything, nothing lives in salt. So we want to keep the salt a little bit away from the yeast. So a packet, by the way, is the same as 2¼ teaspoons.
Chef, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Couldn't you just put the salt in the bottom of the bowl before you put the flour in?
Wherever you want to. That's what we do. Professionals typically put the salt in first, the flour on top in a mixer. Okay, but just mixed it. So now we have the flour, the salt, the yeast. So I'm just going to blend those together because I have 2 different flours. Make sure they're all well mixed. Don't want any pockets of yeast or pockets of salt or anything like that. Use a small little whisk here. Try not to make a mess. Yesterday I was doing it and I, used my spoon and man, there was flour everywhere. Typical. Sometimes they might just call me the messy chef instead of the aortic chef. All right, so that looks really nice. Next step is our liquid. We have 2 liquids to go in. Here we go. 1.5 cups. I got it. Thank you very much. $12 ounces, 1.5 cups. Oh, perfect. Of warm water. And another secret to this is a little bit of vinegar. Okay, a small amount of vinegar. It works to tenderize the acid. Works with the proteins, and helps the bread have a more tender, and it rises better. Plus a little bit of flavor, a little bit of acid always brings out flavor since we're reducing our salt. Oop. So 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, there we go. That one poured a little fast. Like how I do that? That was the oop measure. So, the vinegar. Get rid of my whisk because that's not going to work anymore. Go to the spoon. See how simple this is. Okay, make a little well in the middle. Pour in my water and vinegar and just start stirring. This total stir should take about 45 seconds, less than a minute. Just want to get everything, bring everybody to the party, mix around the outsides, bring it all into the center, stir, stir, stir until you get a nice soft dough. Okay, it's gonna be really what we call shaggy when it's done. When this bowl is nice for demonstrating and such, I typically do it in a deeper glass bowl, but I have only one and I've used it already. So see, now you can do this with your hands too. What if you don't like to get your hands messy? Or like me, this is kind of well, when doing this program, I don't really want to have my hands in all the bread. So just mix it, make sure everybody is wet. Okay. And we're just about there. Okay.
So Jeff, before they had yeast in the packet, where did yeast come from?
Where did yeast come? It comes from the air.
Okay.
You know, like we talk about sourdoughs and things, you can make sourdough by just leaving flour and water out and letting it naturally just, they're everywhere. They're living organisms. They're part of the plant family. So they found them there, you know, and from fermentations and such. All right, there we go. Nice dough, simple, shaggy. You see that? It's just wet, sticky, shaggy, as we say, like in who's that? You know who Shaggy was? No?
Yeah, the cartoons.
Right. So next thing we want to do is we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap. You could use a towel too. Plastic wrap seems to work well. All you need a couple quick pieces. We're going to let it proof for 4 hours. This is the part where you can just go sit down and do something else and relax. Okay, let the yeast do all the work. Because the yeast is going to feed on the flour. That's how yeast works, you know. Yeast consumes the sugars. And it has 2 waste products, just like us. It eats, it has waste products. So when yeast consumes food in the form of sugars, it then excretes alcohol, okay, is one, and the other is carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is what makes the bread rise. So got to let it do its thing, though. So there's plenty of sugars here available for it. So for 4 hours, you want to do it at about 70 degrees room temperature, nice rise. If you're in a cooler area, it's been cold down here in Florida. It was 42 degrees when I woke up this morning. So it also works well. You can put it in your oven with the light on. And that makes a nice, warm, you know, room temp environment. So here's my other bowl. I made a batch this morning. Magic of TV. So this is what it looks like now after 4 hours in the proofing zone or the proofing oven. And it's nice and warm from the heat generated by the yeast.
Bring that up.
You know.
Bring that up, Rob.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
See that? So it's nice and fluffy.
A little higher.
It's got lots of air in it.
A little higher. Little higher. Yeah. Nice.
You can see on the side all the bubbles. This is what we want to see. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, there's 2 more steps to this. We need to form our little dough ball, so to speak, the no knead part. But we do have to shape it and do a little mixing. So this I'm going to do with my hands. You could try to do it with a spoon, but not as well. I put some oil on my hands so that the dough doesn't stick to my hands. And you need to separate the dough from the bowl, from the sides. Take your hands, just go in there, move it off the sides of the bowl. See it starts to deflate. Now I'm going to fold it on top of itself, and I'm going to do it about 8 times. Not really a knead, it's just a lift and fold. 1, 2, you can go around twice. 3.
Need more oil.
Nope. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Smells like beer in here right now. All that. Oh, I didn't talk about the flavorings. So in order to, you know, since we don't have much salt, it's nice to add other flavors. So what I did to this bread today is I have a beautiful rosemary bush outside. So I clipped and put some fresh rosemary into the flour that was in there already, and a little bit of black pepper. So it's rosemary and black pepper. So that'll have a nice aromatic, flavor to it. And you can do anything else that you want. I've done things like we can put molasses in it or maple syrup. You can do any herb, dry herb or seasoning that you really like. Use any of those salt-free products. If you like dill, you can do caramelized onions. You can do, I have nutritional yeast, which I have a jar right there in the closet. Is nutritional yeast. It's it's a vegan product. It is gluten-free, of course, but it tastes remarkably like cheese. You can just hold it up to the camera there. Higher. There you go. That's nutritional yeast. A lot of people use that. If you put that in, it'll give the bread a cheesy flavor. Or you can, sprinkle it on eggs. If you're making rolls or you have bread already, you want to put it in the oven, brush it with a little bit of oil and sprinkle that on top. You'll have cheesy bread. Lots of uses for the nutritional yeast. It's also really good. It's a good protein source. And so it's got other good nutrients in it. So, okay, my bread is here, ready and done. What I typically would do at this point, we wait another 30 minutes. We want the bread to recover from all that motion and stuff that we just put to it. I deflated it by, folding it and mixing it. So we want to give it a second to grow again. And so we put it aside for 30 minutes. All right. But I'm not going to wait 30 minutes because otherwise this program's going to take, hours. It was 4 hours to put the bread in the first proof. Okay.
So before they had yeast, going back about 4,000 years, they used beer and wine as their fermentation product.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to put this into, now when you bake this, at this point, I would turn my oven on to 450 degrees, 450, right? Bake, 450. And it makes a lot of noise. That's a convection oven. So put it 450 while this rises for 30 minutes. Put your baking vessel. I have a ceramic bowl here. And you can also cast iron. Most typically, a lot of these recipes you'll see will say use a 6 to 8 quart cast iron Dutch oven, which works real well. If you have a Le Creuset or one of those other cast iron, enameled cast iron, those are perfect. A safe Pyrex or a ceramic like this. The big thing is they have to have a lid. All right. So you preheat the bowl. I've put it in the oven with the half hour, bring it out. It's piping hot. Okay. We got to use the hot pads. Got that. And bring it out, set it down, take your bread, let's lift it, lay it right in the bowl as it is. Nope, you do not, no oil necessary. Or the outside is somewhat oiled because of the, my hands were all oiled. Excuse me while I wash my hands off again. That's why I didn't make the bread with my hands the whole time, because I'd spend half my time in the sink. So let's pretend it's risen. Our 30 minutes is up. Put it in here. I take my scissors and make a little snip in the center, a little X.
You don't need this anymore.
No, I do not need that anymore. Nice X. So that gives when the bread rises, it gives it room to expand.
A little higher.
And you'll have that nice opening in the center. And it won't stress the outside of the bread. So here we go. All right, our bread goes into the oven. We'll put this aside for a little bit. Right, you put it in the oven, 450, and we wait a few minutes. Off we go, and 30 minutes covered. Ding, ding, ding. 30 minutes is up, or 35 actually. I found with this particular one yesterday, 35 minutes. Some of it depends on your oven. 35 minutes, reach in with a hot glove, of course, take the cover off. Then another 30 minutes uncovered until it gets really nice and golden brown. How do we know the bread is done? One, by that color. Two, You're going to take it out. Whoop. More magic here. I have a time machine in my kitchen. Take that off, and you can see the lovely color. You can see where the bread, obviously I made this one earlier.
A little higher. There you go.
So you can see where I made the X, the cut, it kind of, peeked up there. See that nice dark brown golden color, all right? GBD as we call it in the kitchens, golden brown delicious. And the crust. Hear that nice crispy crust? You would then turn it out onto a cooling rack, which when it's hot, it pops right out. There we go. And look at that, the bread was magically cut already too. So, give you an idea of what our crumb looks like. See those nice air holes where the yeast has worked, and that is the crumb. And then the other is nice and consistent. See the crust line around the outside, all that nice crispiness is gorgeous. Now, how else do we know that the bread is done? This particular bread, you need to have a thermometer, because just because it's brown doesn't mean it is finished. This bread goes a little bit higher than most other breads. Typically, regular loaf bread is 190 degrees in the center. This bread needs to be about 210 degrees. So you want to take your thermometer, put it right into the middle, and it should read 210. And then you know that bread is done, and the dough has been cooked, and it's ready to go.
When you're cooking in an iron pot, it will cook slightly faster because the iron holds heat a little bit better.
Basically, you're making an oven inside an oven is what you're doing. Do you want to taste this bread, Mindy?
Sure.
Because we didn't really get a chance to taste this yet. This one. Boy, this thing is... Oh, it's all good, honey. You hear that?
No, the noise canceling is doing a very good job.
Okay. Oh, you want me to cut another one?
That doesn't work either. That's so good.
There we go. We're breaking some bread. Here we go. The official taste. Yeah, this one's nice. I'll tell you, I had to play with this as a chef. I do. First one was a fail. Went in the garbage. The magic to fix that was the vinegar and the flavoring addition to it. Made the big difference, because this one, the texture is just right. It's nice. It'll make nice toast, nice sandwich, a bowl of soup, and a little bit of butter. Okay, much better for us than margarine. We can still afford to have some butter in our diet.
Yes, you're still going to have some butter. If you do use margarine,
butter better for us than margarine.
if you're in the grocery store, they still make it. Parquet in a squeeze bottle. That means there's no saturated fats to turn it into a log, so it's got less saturated fat in it.
Which is what we want to avoid.
Which we want to avoid.
Okay.
Okay, walk me through the vinegar again.
I can't hear you.
Walk me through the vinegar again.
Okay, the vinegar. The vinegar, excuse me, I had just couldn't resist another piece of crust. Vinegar is an acid, so it plays a couple different roles. I use red wine vinegar. You can use malt vinegar. You can use cider vinegar. I also use in the other one some sherry vinegar, sherry wine vinegar. One that adds a little bit of flavor, right? The apple cider vinegar will give you a little bit of apple flavor. This, you really don't taste it much. It all pretty much dissipates. But the other thing is it raises the acidity level of the bread dough. Acid denatures protein. So it starts to break it down, and which makes the bread rise easier. It gets a better rise because you've softened the protein strands in the bread, which basically that is gluten. Okay, that's the protein, the bread protein that gives us that stretch and that chew and so on. But the vinegar tends to will tenderize it a little bit and make your bread rise better. The first one I didn't do it; it was not as nice and round as well. So because remember, we're pushing this. This is a quick no knead bread, a 4 hour no knead bread. Most no kneads, which you can look at, I can post another recipe for that. It's really the same exact recipe, other than half the amount of yeast, and you do an overnight 12 to 14 hour proof in the refrigerator, or if it's cool, um, some of them are just at room temperature. Okay, but a 12 to 14 hour proof with the instant yeast then follows the same process. You know, that does have a better fermentation. It will develop more flavor because of that slower fermentation, that slower proofing will create more flavor because as the yeast gobble up, you know, those sugars again, when we get the
Forms the
alcohol,
gluten better.
and so all these things happen with slower. So we sacrifice a little bit for a quick no knead bread, but not much. I would be happy to eat this bread most of the time. All right. Again, without the salt, though, that's very important. But so you have to leave some in when you're baking bread.
You can
Yeah.
add flaxseed,
Right. You can change.
put a little oatmeal in it.
You can change your flours. You can use rye flour with the whole wheat as well. You can use, you know, other grains and such that you can add to it and play with it. You can add other dry ingredients. I talked about the herbs. I talked about the wet ingredients like caramelized onions, which would be really nice. But you can also add nuts and things. This would be very good with walnuts in it. Would taste really, really good. You could do pepitas, the pumpkin seeds, all those types of things that you can add. You know, whatever your taste, whatever you like, is fine. Okay. Any quick questions right now, Josh, on the bread?
No, but let's say hi to Velda. Hi to Christina. Christina says, I'll try that tomorrow, then try it with my homemade butter.
Okay. Okay. We'll do that. Hi, guys. I'm so happy that you all joined us. I'm going to put this other one back in the oven so it continues proof for another 4 hours, 7 o'clock tonight. Yeah, we started talking about yeast and fermentations. Little side note, this was not planned, but
Okay.
we're trying.
Christina's asking about dry fruit.
I'm
That's
sorry?
fine too.
Sure.
Dry
Oh, yeah.
fruit is fantastic.
Apricots, dried cherries, dried blueberries, anything like
Mm.
that. Yes, are all good.
I do recommend you dice them small because of the way the gluten's acting in the bread. You don't want large chunks. It won't proof. It may hold the bread down. It may,
Okay.
from fact.
Yeah. If you have really large, like apricots and things like that, blueberries and cherries, really craisins won't make a big difference. So we started this. We're fermenting apple skins in water, touch of sugar. This is day 4. So you can see how it's nice and bubbly and foamy, and it's, you know, getting the water's all cloudy. That's all the yeast, and the bubbles are the carbon dioxide that is creating, and it's starting to smell like alcohol. It's nicely fermented. So what we're going to do with this, we're watching something about Scandinavian cooking, and this guy had apple orchards. So these are apple peels, and I think we chopped up the cores. We will strain this.
I put the whole apple in there, honey.
We will strain this and then use the liquid as a fermentation starter. We're going to make a sourdough with it. We'll put rye flour in it, probably about an equal amount. So if there's, you know, or less. So if there's 2 cups of liquid, it might use about a cup of rye flour, because when you make a sourdough, it's really thin. And then just put that back in the refrigerator and let it work. And it'll get that rye flavor. And then that'll be a starter to make rye bread, because you can't really just make a good rye bread same day. It takes some work to make rye bread. So Okay, if there's no questions, then I'm going to move on to my next step here. Gluten-free peanut butter cookies. We've been talking about gluten, right? Bread's got gluten, everything's got gluten. 3 ingredients. This is quick. Oh, those of you that know Morty, he's outside whining. We could bring him in.
Excuse me, I'll go get them.
Thank you. So 3 ingredients in a bowl or a bag. This is really simple. Oh, guess who came in on his own? So peanut butter, egg, and sugar. Okay, really simple. 1, 1, 1. Or you can also actually reduce your sugar if you wish. Now, peanut butter is messy. So what I like to do, line my cup with a piece of, plastic wrap. Works really well. Take your peanut butter. I need a cup of peanut butter. That's
You want some other nut butter?
We can use any nut butter. I like to show them the wow butter. I love wow butter. Nobody else in my family really likes it.
I like it. It's okay.
It is a nut butter made from from soy nuts. It's 100% soybean, but it's really much lower sodium. So you typically, let's say this jar of peanut butter, it has 150 milligrams in 2 tablespoons. And what is in the
100 milligrams in 2 tablespoons
So-
of salt.
Okay, so that is a third less, right? So that's always good. All right, so we get a cup of peanut butter. This is a very forgiving recipe, by the way. So if you're off a little bit, it's okay. Need just a little bit more. We're gonna have to buy more peanut butter. Boy, we go through a lot of peanut butter in this house. Typical American family.
Dogs like peanut butter.
Yeah, that's true. We got 2 dogs. They're probably responsible for part of that usage. So, okay. Here's my cup of peanut butter. And take it out of the measuring cup. And look at that. Clean. Peel it off.
Now the other way
No
to
loss,
make this,
no waste.
the other way to make this
Right?
is do the same thing as lining the cup with this wrap, putting it into one of the bags
Into a plastic bag, like a baggie.
without any flour in it, so it's
course.
gluten free.
But just put the peanut butter, the egg, and the sugar in there, and you can mix it by hand. Really good exercise for your hands. So I've got my peanut butter, my egg. Now you can cut back on the sugar, which I will do. The recipe typically calls for 1, 1, 1. I'll use about a half a cup of sugar, no less than that.
In any recipe, you can reduce the sugar by 1/3 to a half. Anything more than that, you have to put a substitute in.
Remember, sugar is hygroscopic. What does hygroscopic mean? Very important in baking. Hygroscopic means that
It
it
absorbs.
absorbs water. So if you reduce the sugar in a recipe, things are going to be wet. Now, it takes a minute to get this egg emulsified, everything together. Again, this only takes really short and quick. Mix like mad.
You
I
want
think
to
this
try
is-
to dissolve the sugar crystals.
Yes.
That's the whole point of mixing.
Well, and emulsifying the egg and everything else.
Yeah.
You're going to see it's going to tighten up. See, it's getting really tight now. More work, more work, more work. You could use a mixer. Use a hand mixer with some beaters, but it's going to be a real mess to get it off the beaters. I would use a paddle. You could do it in a stand mixer with a paddle, would be fine. Okay, so see, it's just about there. So that turned from a wet, gloppy mess. And now I have cookie dough. It's regular, good looking peanut butter cookie dough. So what we do with this next, we put it on a unlined or a lined, ungreased baking sheet. Bake them at 375 I'm gonna use this pan. Luckily, I have 2 ovens, so I can put them up here at 375. Have my oven on. Whoop, 375, and off it goes.
Don't have to have anything
No grease at all.
to go for the oven.
Nope.
We're getting used to our new equipment.
So now this, make them as large or small as you want. If you make moderate size, smaller ones, you can get about 18 cookies out of the batch. You make them larger, like full spoonfuls, you'll get about 12 cookies out of the batch. Now, if you don't want to use it all, you can make these little balls and then freeze them.
Absolutely.
In fact, I have some in the freezer already. Really simple and easy. Roll them into little balls. You can stop there if you wish.
Excuse me for walking in front of the camera. Someone
Yes.
asking for attention.
Yes. Now, let's just do 8 large ones.
I found if you mix it until it's not grainy, you don't see the sugar granules, then you won't have that crystal sugar taste in the cookie
I like
itself.
to, thanks. Okay, so we got our 8 little peanut butter balls. Take your fingers and push them down a little bit. You can use a fork and do the crisscross if you like, the typical peanut butter crisscross. You can do a thumbprint and, do a peanut butter and jelly cookie, put a thumbprint in and put a little dab of jam in there. You can also mix other dry ingredients. They're non-essentials. So you can put chocolate chips in there. You can put peanuts in there you can use
crunchy peanut butter.
Crunchy peanut butter, or you can, if you're using almond butter, you can put almond chips in there. Anything that you really want, you can add to it dry that won't make a difference in the baking process.
Hershey's Kisses in the center for the thumbprint cookie.
Nice. So these then go into our oven for an entire 10 minutes. Okay, that's it. They're going to start to turn brown, like a cookie should. And after 10 minutes, you may have to turn them around at the 5-minute if your oven is not real even. So we're going to bake them. It's off. We're going to bake it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then pull them out. Allow them to cool on the cookie sheet or the pan for 10 minutes. They'll finish cooking on the pan. So when they do come out, they're not going to be firm. Okay, if you tap them with your finger, it's going to go right in. Let them sit for 10 minutes, then take them off the pan and put them on a cooling rack. And when they're cool enough, to eat, go for it. This is what they look like when they are done. Excuse me. Somebody smells peanut butter. Here's a lovely peanut butter cookie. They come out really nice. And I will break one for you.
And eat one for you?
Probably. Nice looking cookie. Okay. Regular looking cookie dough for peanut butter cookies. And absolutely delicious. It's like eating a spoonful of peanut butter.
With sugar added.
Yeah. Sweet peanut butter. So real simple. Again, easy. It's not low. Well, it is somewhat low per cookie.
There is no added salt.
Right. Nothing added. And if you use a peanut butter or a nut butter product that has lower sodium, like that Wow butter, or almond butter, or any of the other ones that you may like, you can have even less sodium. Reducing the sugar does help if you're sensitive to sugar. But easy. Again, I'm trying to do things here that are easy for us because sometimes we just don't have the energy. Okay. This is a few minutes and you can have a cookie treat, with your cup of tea or coffee, or just sit down and eat cookies. My dog is sitting here shaking. He has a peanut butter shake. He smells peanut butter. And he's going nuts. Okay. So, any questions on the cookie?
No, hi Tam Tam.
No. I can mail you some, Josh. They ship
Even
pretty
Oh,
well.
Josh, even
this
you could make them.
recipe. This
Yeah, you could
recipe
make
look
these. You have a working oven, Josh?
exactly. I was trying to say this recipe is easy enough that even I would try it.
Yep. Simple, easy, and delicious. They are really so good. We put the chocolate chips. Sometimes if I have plain, I'll just put, peanuts from the jar, unsalted, half peanuts, because I like nice chunky peanuts in it. But they're really good. They're just absolutely delicious. Okay. That is, the rest of these are just going to go in the freezer. I'll leave those up there. No, actually, I'm going to take them out because it got warm in 2 minutes. And I'll either bake them off later or just roll them because I have some just to show how that works. Froze these earlier. I have nice little frozen peanut butter balls. Just take them out of the freezer ahead of time, let them thaw, pop them back into I'll take them off this plate, put them into a baggie. So if you just want 2 cookies, 2 or 3 cookies, you can do that. Pop them in the oven, pop them in the toaster oven, and bake yourself a couple of fresh peanut butter cookies. So simple, so easy,
And controlled.
and that
because
is
you're
what
only
we
cooking
need.
A couple.
That is what we need in our life, is simple and easy at times. We don't always want the difficult and the hard. So I hope you enjoyed that. Since I've been making bread, and we threw the word gluten around several times, I'm going to talk with Mindy. She's to come back up here and join me. And what I'd like to do, talk about gluten a lot. And I thought I'd like her to address some of the common myths. Right up here, Mindy.
I'm coming.
Don't be camera shy. Don't be camera shy.
I am.
Okay. We're gonna talk about some of the common myths. It's the easiest way to talk about gluten and in your diet every day. Because I get approached all the time about, chef, can you make this gluten free? Can I do that gluten free? How do I deal with this? I'm on a gluten free. I don't like to eat gluten, so on and so on. So, some people, it's medical, it's a fad, it's, there's so many misconceptions, but there's also a lot of science about it. So let's just talk about that, okay?
So
Let me ask the first question.
let me ask you the first question.
Okay, what is gluten?
What is gluten?
Okay, scientifically, gluten is in, not just in wheat, it is found in many grains, but it's actually the combination of 2 protein molecules, glutenin and gliadin. And the 2 together, when you add water and you add work, so making bread, right? We take the flour, which has the glutenin and gliadin in it, add the water, the work is the kneading. The more you knead, the more gluten you produce.
It actually breaks the 2 molecules apart, the 2 proteins. That's what allows it to start stretching.
Right, and they combine and make gluten. Right, so we talk about that in the bake shop all the time, whether you want to create a lot of gluten, like in pizza dough, which you work and work and work, or really good chewy bread. That's that chew and that stretch. That's the gluten. But then there's other times we try to avoid making gluten, like when we're making muffins or quick breads. That's where you just, take all your dry ingredients until everything is wet. Kind of like making pancakes. Many of you made pancakes. You take all that dry, put the wet, and you don't want to overstir it, right? Because then they're tough and chewy. Because if you overstir your pancake batter or your muffin batter, it creates gluten, and then they're tough and chewy, and they don't rise right, and you get tunnels, all sorts of problems. So same thing with cakes. We don't want to overstir, but cakes use a low protein flour. So
the other thing, give an example of if you made pizza dough.
Yeah.
And I forgot to put the yeast in.
If you forgot to put the yeast in?
I forgot to put the yeast in. When I go to stretch the pizza,
it's not going to at all.
It's going to break.
Well,
it's going to crack.
Well,
it's going to be.
Let's back up. Okay. If you don't add the yeast, you might as well just throw it out and start all over again. Okay. When it comes to bread making, there's no going backwards. So if you combine your flour and your water and your salt and whatever else, mix it together, you're going to have this dough, but it's not going to do. It's going to be a rock because you're not. It's not going to proof. It's not going to rise, and you can't add the yeast after you do all of that. The yeast has to be mixed in with the. If it's instant yeast, it has to go in with the flour. If it's active dry yeast, you have to activate it with some water and add it with your liquid, but it has to go into the mixture in the beginning. So you're not going to have anything if you
Except matzah.
well, okay, yeah, you'll have matzah. You can roll it out real flat, poke some holes in it, and bake it in a really hot oven and make matzah. That's about all it's good for. So uh, that's how that'll work. The yeast doesn't make once it proofs, then it gets all nice and stretchy because now you've got the gas in there, and that has made it softer and easier, and you've got that gluten that is now stretched. Gluten's like rubber band. If you've ever made things, made bread or even a pie dough, and you start rolling it out, you know how you roll it out, and then pie dough just it kind of snaps back. Well, that's gluten. It's kind of like a rubber band. So that's why we roll pie dough, then let it rest for a minute or two so the gluten relaxes. Then you go, aha, you're relaxed. Go back and roll it again. Stretch it out a little bit more. Maybe this is like your physical therapist, right? Got to do it in because you start, then you take a break, then you do it again, stop, do it again. Same thing with the gluten. Okay. So
Okay, so
should everyone, Mindy,
mhm.
should everybody be on a gluten-free diet?
Absolutely not. A gluten-free diet is specifically and necessary for someone that has celiac disease, gluten intolerance, or wheat allergies. For the healthy general population, we don't need to reduce gluten. Healthy gluten or healthy grains are good in our diet. One of our main concerns is that
Excuse me.
with the new dietary recommendations, which will be changing soon, women should eat about 4 servings of grains, 4 to 6 servings, and men should eat 6 to 8 servings of grain a day. So the average is 6 grains.
Okay, so if you're giving up, like there's in whole just wheat kernels, like kefta and no, but if you do that, I mean the gluten hasn't been formed yet, but it's still there. There's gluten and gliadin are there. There's still small amounts available. So or barley, or
Yes,
things
you
that nature
have it.
have
So
some in
if
there.
you have celiac, basically what's happening, it's affecting your intestines and you don't have the ability to absorb.
Right. You can stop it, or it inflames your intestines and you can't absorb
Correct.
nutrients. So is wheat free the same as gluten free?
Absolutely not. If you remember, we said grains, which included barley and rye and triticale, which is a combination of grains, which is the best thing to use to make cookies.
Mm-hmm. So all you look at your 7 holy grains, okay, they all pretty much have available gluten in them. So wheat free is not the same as gluten free. If you're wheat free, some people I are allergic. I know a friend, she's a baker. I mean, check this out. She is a pastry chef, very accomplished pastry chef. And after many, many years, she developed a wheat allergy, and it was a contact allergy. So anytime her hands touched flour, they would break out in hives up her arms. If she ate flour, wheat flour, she would get sores in her mouth and down her throat and into her stomach. And it was really terrible. So could you imagine being a pastry chef and not being able to touch flour? So she did. She had to use gloves and everything else in order to produce. But anyways, that's an allergy, which is a reaction like the hives or anaphylactic shock, which is different than our intolerances. We'll get to. So
even if you're eating gluten free and you're following wheat free products, they can also be contaminated just because of where they're being produced. And people that have celiac disease are very conscientious. Do you still have the yeast out there? Or did I put it away?
no, it's in the refrigerator right in the front. So
No,
take
this nutritional yeast.
Oh, it was
So
there.
if you look on it, the label,
Shut up.
it says gluten free. For most people, that will be okay. If you have celiac disease, you need to make sure it's certified gluten-free. Or if you try it, you don't get a stomach ache or all the cramping or feel terrible, then I guess it would be okay for you.
Okay. So is it okay for people tell me, I know I have friends, we all have friends, hopefully, or acquaintances. I went gluten free and now I've got so much more energy. I feel so much better. I just get around and up, and this gluten free diet has given me energy. Does going gluten free give you more energy?
It is not the gluten-free part that gives you more energy. The fact that you cut out the carbohydrates, such as bread, cookies, you're also reducing your amount of fats and sugars. And then you're replacing those with vegetables and fruits. Vegetables and fruits absorb faster into your system and will give you immediate energy.
So, okay, so it's not the lack of gluten that's giving the energy, it's the better diet that comes as a result, typically, of taking gluten out, because you replace all those other foods with new foods.
We also looked at, there is no scientific evidence, and I looked through multiple different articles that say that reducing gluten is going to help you lose weight.
Well, that was my next question, but you beat me to it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so does following a gluten-free diet encourage weight loss?
Yes, only because of not the gluten-free, as I said before, what you're modifying out of the diet.
Right. So the lack of gluten doesn't cause you to lose weight. It's again, eating a healthier diet. You're giving up all the the white starches, the breads, the cookies, things that have flour in them, the snack foods, all pastas, all these, white things that
Are highly processed.
yes, but even whole wheat products and also have gluten, but you're giving those up, but you're replacing your diet with something else. So you're eating more dairy, you're eating more protein, you're eating more fresh fruits and vegetables, or things of that
Well,
nature that don't
typically,
have it. So that will, overall, you have a calorie reduction.
typically when you eat the products that don't have gluten, example is rice. Most people do not eat a portion of rice. You know what a portion of rice is equal to, Rob?
Yes, a half a cup.
1/2 cup. Same thing with pasta. I don't know anybody, including myself, that will eat a 1/2 cup of pasta. Remember, you're allowed 6 grain servings a day, or 6 to
Right.
8. They should be 50-50. Half whole grain, the other half can be those other ones that are processed.
Okay. So as a review here, we touched on some of the items about gluten, um, and taking out of your diet. Basically, the people that shouldn't be eating gluten are those that have celiac disease, that have a known intolerance or sensitivity, not an allergy. Okay, the sensitivity just makes you uncomfortable, bloated, gassy, right?
Mhm.
Feeling bad, or that have a wheat allergy. If you have an allergy, we're talking anaphylactic shock or hives, things of that nature are signs of a real allergy. Otherwise, you can
So
consume.
let's talk about celiac. You can test for celiac. It's blood work and a biopsy in your small intestine. Key to this, if you go to the doctor, you better have been eating gluten for about a week, because if you don't eat any gluten, you will not show that you have celiac disease.
Okay.
There is no test for checking for sensitivity. It's just people say they drop it out of their diet and they feel better, then go for it.
Yeah, or the doctor will have you add things, or remove things from your diet and see what happens, through trial and error.
And
Okay.
of course, you can do a blood test
Okay.
for
Right.
a food
Right.
allergy.
We're going to wrap this up
Okay.
because we're getting close to an hour. So just review some of the risk of going gluten free when you don't really need it. So
Okay,
there's about 5 or 6 risks,
you limit your healthy fruit choices.
right?
You reduce your intake of nutrients such as carbohydrates, protein, fiber, folate, vitamins, and minerals when you don't eat it. Because in our country, we add those to all our flours.
Right. So if you're dropping flour, you're losing all the things that they, the flour and cereals and so on are fortified. That's what it says on the box or the bag is fortified, just like our milk is fortified with vitamin D. So if you gluten doesn't have those vitamins and minerals in it, but foods that the gluten is found in do, and you run the risk of not getting those.
Correct.
Next.
And what happens on eating gluten-free food, you're increasing fats, carbohydrates, and sodium, because the fats and sugars are often used as the replacement for the gluten-enriched products.
You lose
Fiber,
fibers, right?
lots of fiber.
Bran, right? Wheat bran is a very common fiber source. One of the many, but gluten is found in those, and so if you don't eat gluten, you don't get a lot of the fiber-rich grain foods that you should. Do you know that how much more does typically gluten-free foods cost than regular foods in the grocery store?
160% more.
Right.
Or 1.6 times more.
Right. That's a lot of money. So if you want to just, I'll just go gluten-free, make sure you have money in your wallet. Also, the foods that you replace the gluten with, like rice, okay? Gluten-free flour and gluten-free breadings that are typically made in pasta made with rice flour and corn flour. Now, that's okay. In fact, I like some of those gluten-free pastas. They're good, but what's the problem with now increasing all this intake of rice flour and rice?
Well, one, you're going to gain weight because, as I said before, we don't eat the right portions. You also lose all your nutrients that you get from those other products. And when I said you can get our diets average 6 grain equivalents a day. So that's a half a cup of rice a day, a 2-inch mini bagel. If you eat a whole bagel, you're eating 4 of your grain portions in a day. Half an English muffin, half a cup of barley or oats or any rice, pasta, quinoa. That's all. One serving is a half a cup.
Okay, but back to this, also the rice and so on, especially if you're diabetic, rice has a higher glycemic index. So it's absorbed faster into your bloodstream, raises your blood sugar, you get spikes from it, and that's not good. And it has less fiber. There's very little fiber in rice, and the protein levels than wheat as well. So you can lose that. And then also we mentioned wheat, the bran, the fiber is considered a prebiotic, okay, and a probiotic both. They feed the gut and your bacteria. So if you're cutting that stuff out, you're probably going to need to supplement that with, make sure you get your other pre and probiotics as well, whether it's from things like kefir, which is billions and billions of probiotics, and then also fermented products, which are great for us.
Okay. If you don't have any dairy problem.
All right. Well, Josh, so are there any questions out there about? I imagine there were questions about gluten.
No, we got a lot of thank you. That was very interesting from Tammy, Christina, and Velda.
Great. All right. Well, then I thank you guys for joining us. We'll probably see you all tomorrow at the Aortic Hangouts for any member of Aortic Hope that wishes to attend. We do that every Thursday afternoon at 2. The next Aortic Kitchen will be in March. I think it's March 8th. It's the first Wednesday of the month, first and third Wednesday of every month. We will be doing Aortic Kitchens. So we will be back with new topics and new discussions on keeping a healthy aortic life in the kitchen. So I'm the aortic chef, Robb Seltzer.
I'm Mindy Seltzer, registered dietitian.
And I want to say thank you very much for joining us today in the Aortic Kitchen.
Thanks for coming. See you next time. Feel free to send questions anytime.